Hey, this video is going to be going over conversions in visitor tracking. So I'm going to show you how to set each one up and what you're looking at after you set it up. So after you set up a couple of different conversions, you're going to see, this is basically the end result that you'll see. You'll see the name of each conversion, what type of conversion you're tracking, your conversion rate, and this explains how it's calculated. And then you'll also see some basic numbers for the past 24 hours, 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, along with trends. So this compares it to the 24 hours previously or the 7 days previous to this. So it's nice because you're able to see all of your numbers without having to create a bunch of different reports and stuff and see it all in one view. Now, when you're setting up conversions, it could be actually people becoming customers on your website, or you could just track important events that happen. So for example, we track this demo page of how many people visited this specific demo page. So it's not exactly a conversion, but when I'm in the visitors tab, I can see anytime someone visited the demo page, there's like a visual representation right there, which is kind of nice to be able to see. Along with that, I get to see how many, like the percentage of people that actually visited that page out of every session, which is just a helpful number to see as well. So let's go ahead and add our first conversion. We're going to be just write test. You can select what color you want to show in that visitors tab that I just showed you earlier, and then you can click next. These are the 3 different conversion types. I would say the most used is probably just page visited. This is definitely the easiest to set up. And if you're tracking, like if someone submitted a form or submitted a checkout, you could just track the thank you page, which I find to be the easiest. Now the difference here for these 2 options, if you want to put in an exact URL, you could paste that straight in there. I typically just use the contains and then just write, whatever the actual slug of that URL is right here, and that works fine too. And this is also helpful if you have, like, let's say your thank you page looks like this, and then you have like order ID and it's a bunch of numbers or something like that. Just putting thank you page there is going to track every page, even with all the different numbers or order IDs or whatever after the thank you page. So I typically just use the contains, and that works probably the best for most people. Now, if you're tracking UTM parameters, you could also just put whatever you want to track in here. So like usually if you are tracking UTM parameters, it's going to be something like UTM source, or I forget exactly how it looks, but it might be like that in your page URL, something like that. And so if you want to track that, you can also just use contains and track that in that way as well, because we track the query parameters, and so that's how you would track a UTM source. Now let's go back to try the entire funnel. So if you add your different steps here, it's basically the same as tracking page visited, except this time you'll just enter multiple URLs. So like, let's say they go to your product page, and then they go to thank you page. You can basically check that out, and then in the end, I'll kind of show you how this looks. If you had multiple pages here, it would show you the funnel of, okay, here's the first page that you had set up in your funnel. Here's the second page, and then it would keep dialing down, and so you would be able to see the percentage that made it through each part of the funnel. And yeah, that's basically how that works. And then this graph over here, this is explaining how many people converted on specific days. And then if you switch to 3 days, it's basically going to aggregate into 3 days. So you see a little bit more of a blended view. And then weekly is the same thing. So how many people visited this week, and you can see the percentage for each of that. That's basically how it works. Lets you track conversions over time. So if you change something on your website, you might see a dip, or you might see an increase, and that might give you an idea, okay, I want to keep this change, or I want to get rid of that change. So that's essentially what we've done as far as tracking conversion rates over time and conversion analytics. Yeah, and that covers the first couple of things here. Now let's go over tracking events. So you can track specific events on your website. So if I want to track this button here, I could click that. This is going to track that specific button. and all buttons like it. So you can click it. And just to be clear, this isn't going to be the same on every website. So it's not going to track every button like it if you haven't set it up on your website to do that. One thing that you can also do is, instead of using this event selector, like this might not work on a lot of people's websites just because their website provider doesn't allow iframes to be loaded on other sites. So you might see an error there that says, you know, there's a problem loading your website or something like that. So you can always track this stuff manually. Like if you go into your website builder and add a class to this button, which might be different on every website builder, so I'm not going to show you how to do that. But if, let's say, you add the class trial button to this button and all of the buttons that start a trial, then you could just come in here, type trial button there, or whatever you set that up to be, and do the click. Like, just because this doesn't load doesn't mean you can't track events. You could still track events. You just have to manually add in classes on your buttons or whatever you're tracking and then save it that way. So just a heads up on that. That's essentially how you track events in your website. All right, that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. Just reach out to support and we'll get back to you soon.